Did you know that the most famous Wild West shootout, the gunfight at the OK Corral, only lasted about 30 seconds? Despite its brevity, it became one of the most iconic moments in American history. But much of what we think we know is pure Hollywood fiction. Today, we're separating fact from fiction as we uncover the myths and realities of the Wild West. When you think of cowboys, you probably picture rugged men wearing hats, boots, and spurs, always ready to draw their six-shooters at the slightest provocation. Hollywood made this image famous, but the reality was far less glamorous. Most cowboys were hard-working ranchers who spent long days herding cattle. Their lives were defined more by blisters and sunburn than by gunfights. Sure, there were guns, but they were tools for protection against predators, not for daily duels. The Wild West is often portrayed as chaotic and lawless, with outlaws running rampant in every town. But the truth is, many Western towns had strict laws. Towns like Dodge City and Tombstone enforced firearm bans, requiring visitors to check their weapons upon arrival. Sheriffs and marshals like Wyatt Earp worked hard to maintain order. While crime did exist, it wasn't the free-for-all depicted in movies. Most people in these frontier towns wanted stability and safety, not constant chaos. Legends like Jesse James and Billy the Kid are often portrayed as Robin Hood-like figures, stealing from the rich to give to the poor. But in reality, these outlaws were criminals, plain and simple. Jesse James, for instance, was a bank robber and murderer who acted out of personal greed rather than any noble cause. Billy the Kid, despite his youthful charm, was involved in cattle rustling and killed multiple people. The myth of the noble outlaw was largely created by dime novels and sensational journalism of the time, feeding the public's appetite for thrilling tales. One undeniable reality of the Wild West was the harsh treatment of Native Americans. As settlers moved westward, they displaced indigenous peoples, often violently. The Indian Removal Act and events like the Trail of Tears led to immense suffering and loss. While movies sometimes romanticize Native American resistance, the reality was grim: broken treaties, massacres, and the loss of ancestral lands. These stories remind us of the true cost of westward expansion. Hollywood loves to show bar fights erupting in saloons, with chairs flying and cowboys smashing whiskey bottles. In reality, saloons were often the center of social life in frontier towns, but were more likely to host card games and political discussions than fistfights. Of course, there were occasional fights, especially in rough mining towns, but the legendary saloon brawl was far from an everyday occurrence. Most patrons were too busy relaxing after a long day of work to start trouble. The Wild West wasn't just a man's world. Women contributed in ways that history often overlooks. Figures like Calamity Jane and Annie Oakley challenged gender norms, becoming skilled sharpshooters and legends in their own right. Meanwhile, countless other women worked as ranchers, teachers, and business owners, helping to shape the frontier's communities. Their stories add depth to the Wild West, showing it was more than just a stage for gunslinging cowboys. The gold rush is often depicted as a time when anyone could strike it rich by panning for gold in California. While a few did find fortune, the vast majority of miners faced disappointment. The real beneficiaries of the gold rush were often the merchants who sold supplies to prospectors. For every nugget of gold found, countless miners left empty-handed, exhausted, and broke. The construction of the Transcontinental Railroad transformed the Wild West, making travel and trade easier than ever before. But the romanticized image of the railroad as a purely positive force overlooks the darker side of its history. Chinese immigrant workers who built much of the railroad faced grueling conditions, discrimination, and dangerous tasks. At the same time, the railroad's expansion displaced Native American tribes, altering their way of life forever. The stereotypical cowboy is often depicted as a white man, but in reality, about 1/4 of all cowboys were black or Mexican. Many were formerly enslaved individuals or immigrants who sought new opportunities in the West. Figures like Nat Love, a legendary black cowboy, broke the mold of Hollywood's one-dimensional portrayal. These diverse cowboys were skilled horsemen and vital to the cattle industry, proving the West was more multicultural than often portrayed. Stagecoaches are often shown as exciting and romantic in films, but traveling by stagecoach was a bumpy and risky experience. Passengers endured long, uncomfortable rides, often through treacherous terrain. To make matters worse, stagecoaches were prime targets for bandits looking for loot. If you enjoyed uncovering the myths and realities of the Wild West, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that separate fact from fiction. Let us know in the comments. What's your favorite Wild West story?